Hi, welcome to the course. Now in this part, I just want to warm you up to the idea of what a home studio or a budget studio looks like. Now normally when you think of studio photography, we think of these really exciting and elaborate looking studios, and we can easily get turned down by that because we might feel that these can be very costly or impossible for a normal person to set up unless and until they're really doing photography professionally. But that's not the case, and this is the reason why I've made this video. So like I told you in the intro video, my whole idea or my whole motivation of creating this course was to enable everyone to do studio photography right from the comfort of their home. Now when you look at a setup like this, I know it doesn't seem too exciting and you might even feel, is this going to enable me to do studio photography? Well, the answer is yes, it does the job. And there are two main advantages of having a budget studio. The first advantage is you can see that it doesn't really occupy too much space. So if you have some room which is available for you, like a garage or any room in your house, you can easily do studio photography. Of course, there are going to be some limitations as compared to, let's say, a properly set up commercial studio, but that's not what we're aiming for anyway, because that has its own problems. So one is, if you've got a little space, like you can see, I'm just in a very small room here, but with this much equipment, I will be able to do studio photography. And the second advantage is the cost. So if you see this setup, this has just about cost me less than 10,000 rupees. So you can see that that's why this is a budget studio, because if you have that much amount of money, you can easily do studio photography because you really won't have to buy too much for a budget studio. Now, of course, later on in the course, I will be showing you many equipments which are required in studio photography, which help you to achieve a certain type of shots. But for basic shots, a very minimal setup is also okay just to start off with things. And I'll be explaining you about all these things that you're seeing, like these lights and all the other things that come into studio photography. Right, so you can see that one advantage is space and the second is cost. Now quickly, before we actually start with the course where we take a deep dive into how studio photography is done and what these things are, I just want to quickly tell you what are the absolute basic essentials you would require if you were to set up a budget home studio. Now the absolute essentials are the most important thing, which is this strobe light. Now strobes, you don't really have to think about them like some big commercial lights or something like that. No, they are just flashes. So we've all seen those pop-up flashes which come on our camera. We're so used to them. You must have also seen external flashes which mount on the camera. These strobe lights or studio lights are not really too different from those flashes. Just think of these lights as big flashes, very, very strong flashes which the other flashes cannot compare with. Right? Of course, we have a whole section on strobe lights, so we'll be spending a lot of time on this, and you'll clearly understand why this light is so important in studio photography later on. But this is definitely one of the most essential things when it comes to studio photography, because I've seen a lot of people, they try to, probably hack this approach by using just normal lights that are available in the hardware shops. And I will really advise you to not take that approach. So buying a strobe light will be very essential, as we'll be seeing later on. So this is the first thing that you'll be requiring. The second thing that you'll be requiring is a modifier like this. In this case, the modifier here is a softbox. Again, we have a section on modifiers, so you'll understand what is the need for these modifiers. But just to show you right now, there's a light. The same light is here, and a modifier comes on top of the light, and it modifies or makes this light coming out of this strobe light much better, and it seems much more pleasing on your subject. But again, we'll be covering different types of modifiers also. So this is a softbox modifier that you're seeing, because it's like a box and it's slightly different from other modifiers. There are also other modifiers that you must have seen, especially in weddings, which are umbrellas. So we'll be looking at different types of modifiers in the modifiers section. So those are two things. One is the strobe light, and the modifier comes on the strobe light. These two things you would of course require. And the third thing you can see behind me is what we call as a backdrop. A backdrop, I won't say is 100% essential, but because a lot of people use walls and use other types of backgrounds, but to achieve certain types of photography, which we'll be seeing later on. For example, low-key photography, where everything is black and you just have a focused light on your subject. You must have seen those type of shots are very, very popular. For those type of photography, you would require a backdrop. Even when you must have seen portraits against a completely white background, in that case, we'll be changing this over to white, right? So a backdrop consists of a few elements. The first element is this backdrop stand. Right? This is not very expensive. You can buy very cheap ones on Amazon and or just your local shop, the photography retailer. And then you get this muslin cloth which comes on it. Again, very cheap. And the third important part are these clamps that you can see here. So these clamps hold the backdrop. For a long time, I didn't even have the clamps. I just used to use safety pins, but still, it's not advisable. It just makes your life much easier when you have these clamps holding the cloth over these backdrop stands. So that's all you need. Let's go through it again. The strobe light, the modifier to modify the light coming from the strobe, and a backdrop stand, a muslin cloth, and clamps to hold the cloth, and all these three form your backdrop. So the strobe light, modifier, backdrop will enable you to do studio photography, and like I told you, this all cost me less than 10,000 rupees. So if you have some space and if you're willing to spend a little amount of money, you can do studio photography. That was my purpose of making this very video. From the next video onwards, we'll get into the learning phase. So I'll see you there. Bye for now.